we saw was somebody who I believe really just wanted to be given a chance, as he said, sort of over and over. And I hope Canadians do that for him.
That's Michelle Shephard. She has been covering the case of Omar Khadr for 15 years. Khadr is the Canadian man who spent years at Guantanamo Bay, convicted of killing an American Army medic during a firefight in Afghanistan in 2002. In fact, Khadr gave Michelle his first interview since he was released from a Canadian prison on bail last month. Michelle has written numerous news stories for the Toronto Star as their national security reporter. She has traveled to Guantanamo Bay some 26 times. She wrote a book about his case. But remarkably, Michelle Shephard had never met Omar Khadr until she went to do this interview with him, the interview you will see tonight. The documentary is called Out of the Shadows, Omar Khadr. It is a collaboration between the Toronto Star, the CBC, and White Pine Pictures. Michelle Shephard joins me now. Welcome to you once again.
Thanks.
What was it like to meet him finally?
Well, I mean, journalistically, it was so satisfying. As you said, I'd written so many articles about him, talked to every person I could think of that would have had contact with him. And so to finally be able to meet someone that you've been writing about and ask him all the questions you wanted to ask, it was really, really satisfying. And I felt really lucky that I was able to collaborate with this director, Patrick Reed, on this film, because I think there's something powerful about letting Canadians see him as well.
Yeah. Let me ask you, what were the top questions, top 2 or 3 questions that you really wanted to know, that, you know, I know as a journalist, that burn inside you. If you ever have the chance to talk to somebody, you want to ask those questions.
Well, it was probably more than 2 or 3, but definitely the issue of the grenade at the firefight. That was one unresolved issue, even though there were larger questions as to whether or not that's a war crime, or issues that surround the military commissions in Guantanamo. But a lot of Canadians wanted to know, did he or did he not throw the grenade? Yeah. There were questions about his family as well that, of course, I wanted to ask.
Yeah, let me put that aside for a moment. I wonder if we do have that clip of his worst memory of the firefight. This is part of the questioning about what happened that day. If we can roll that clip, if we have it. Okay.
My worst memory and nightmares is just the whole firefight. One of the 2 guys threw some grenades behind the wall, and then I think there was a couple of grenades thrown inside the house, and something just exploded beside me.
The bottom line of his answer was he doesn't know. He threw a grenade, he thinks, but he doesn't know if it was the one that killed the medic.
That's right. He said for about 8 years he believed that he had killed Delta Force soldier Christopher Spear, that he was the one. And then about 2008, 2009, evidence started coming out that perhaps it wasn't him. There was a photo that showed him buried under the rubble.
You uncovered that photo, in fact.
It was actually his defense team, and then we were the first to publish it in the Star. But it showed, you know, he was in a position where it might not have been possible for him physically to have thrown it. There was also evidence that there was somebody else alive in the compound at the time the grenade was thrown. So he started to doubt his own memories. And, you know, he was severely, severely wounded. He was shot when he was captured. And so he said, I woke up, first time I regained consciousness, I was in the detention center in Bagram. The interrogators told me this is what had happened. So he wondered, were they my memories, or had I just adopted the narrative that I'd been told for so many years?
Okay. Another narrative that we've been subjected to in this country that we've heard constantly is that he was groomed by his father to be part of that fight, to be part of that firefight and was brought there by his father to be part of that combat mission in Afghanistan. Has he been in touch with any members of his family?
He has. He's kept a relationship going. I think he was given limited access by communication when he was in Guantanamo, definitely when he came back to Canada, and he will continue that relationship. He has certain conditions, bail-ordered conditions on how he can speak to them. It needs to be supervised.
And in English.
And in English, that's right. And if it's an in-person visit, it has to be pre-approved by his bail officer.
Why is that? What are they afraid of?
I think there's concerns because while his one brother was charged at one point but had the charges, he was acquitted of them, The other family members have not been charged, but they have espoused radical views. I mean, there's this perception in Canada that, as you know, they've been called Canada's first family of terrorism. Whether they are or not, that's definitely a perception that was there. The judge asked for that, or the government asked for that condition. The judge granted it, and the defense was fine with it.
Okay. Since he has been out, within moments, he was in front of the cameras, or within hours, I should say, saying he wants a second chance. Does he deserve it?
I think he deserves a second chance. I think he deserves a chance. Just to clarify, when he came out at that time, because I've heard a lot of people say, oh, he was waiting for his moment to make a political statement. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do the interview with us. He was really reluctant. We really had to talk him into it. So this is somebody who I truly believe wants to fade from the headlines, wants to try and get on with life. I believed him when he said that.
How did you convince him to do the interview?
It was just a lot of talking, you know, and I think it was a little bit of a personal appeal. This has been something that I've covered for 12 years. This is a documentary that, you know, Patrick and myself and the whole team has done intensely for 2 years, and we really want to finish it.
Yeah, it's a divisive topic in Canada because, as you know, the polls are saying some people believe him and some people don't. How have you come to the conclusion to believe him?
Well, I think just through, you can only learn so much about somebody spending a couple days, but what he said over those 2 days and the way he carried himself was so consistent with all those people I talked to over the years who had grown close to him, you know, forensic psychiatrists, psychologists, his lawyers, other guards, interrogators, Canadian government officials. And that's always been the interesting thing about the case, Carol. It's been an incredible divide between what the politicians are saying and what those who work for the government have said. The bureaucrats, people in Corrections Canada, who have said, well, we don't really believe he is any risk. And I find it frustrating that he's been held up as such a symbol. And with all, I mean, I cover terrorism. I know what's going on in terms of national security. I've interviewed terrorists in Yemen and Somalia, other places. I mean, if really the Canadian government feels that Omar Khadr is the greatest threat to Canada, then I would question the security advice that the Prime Minister is getting.
Yeah, let me ask you this, though. You've been on this story for 15 years. I mean, is there a risk that your objectivity has been impacted by this story because you've been on it for so long?
I mean, I definitely think that's been a criticism that has been out there. And I don't think any journalist can be completely objective after making 26 trips to Guantanamo and covering something so intensely. Having said that, there's times when I've written articles and I've received death threats from those who support or those who are against Omar Khadr and fierce criticism for those who support it. So a lot of times I have come down the middle. And when we went into these interviews, we went in with a really open mind. And, you know, for the documentary, Patrick did a lot of the interviews as well. He's been intensely covering this for the last 2 years, but doesn't have the same, perhaps, attachment to the story that I would. So I think what you get tonight is a really balanced, unfiltered perspective.
All right. Well, Michelle Shephard, thank you for joining me in studio today.
Thanks, Carol.